The knock on his door wasn't polite. It wasn't hesitant. It was furious, sharp, and final, the kind of knock that carries months of unsaid words. Daniel froze in the middle of washing the dinner plates, soap sliding from his fingers as his 6-year-old daughter Mia looked up at him with wide, worried eyes. When he opened the door, she stood there, breath trembling, eyes blazing, pain spilling over, and before he could even speak, she finally yelled, "You're fired." Before we step into what really happened that night, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that change ordinary lives. Daniel hadn't planned on becoming a single father at 32. Life had rewritten his story without asking permission. One day he was a husband building a future, and the next he was standing in a hospital hallway holding his daughter's tiny hand, learning how silence can echo louder than screams. Since then, everything in his world revolved around Mia. School lunches packed at dawn, bedtime stories read with heavy eyes, hair clumsily braided by hands that once only knew spreadsheets and steering wheels. He worked at a small marketing firm, not glamorous but stable. Stability was everything to him. Stability meant rent paid on time. Stability meant ballet lessons for Mia. Stability meant safety. That was where she came in. Her name was Claire. She joined the company 6 months earlier, sharp, confident, and quietly compassionate. She noticed things other people didn't. She noticed how Daniel skipped lunch to make school pickups. She noticed how he stared at his phone during meetings, waiting for updates from Mia's teacher. She noticed how he smiled at everyone but never really looked at anyone. Claire had been assigned as his project coordinator. At first, their interactions were purely professional. Emails, deadlines, shared documents. But slowly, small gestures began to weave into their routine. She would leave an extra coffee on his desk when she noticed he looked exhausted. She would offer to cover late client calls so he could attend Mia's school recital. She once brought homemade soup when she overheard him telling someone Mia had a cold. Daniel misunderstood every single signal. To him, Claire was kind because she was professional. Helpful because she was ambitious, friendly because she wanted to impress management. He built walls around every possibility. He convinced himself he was protecting his daughter, protecting his fragile routine, protecting his heart from another devastating loss. But kindness, when ignored long enough, begins to ache. Claire never confessed her feelings outright. Instead, she showed up consistently. She learned Mia's favorite cartoon character. She once waited in the parking lot for an hour because Daniel's car wouldn't start, pretending she had paperwork to finish just so he wouldn't feel embarrassed accepting help. The turning point came the night Daniel's boss called him into a private meeting. The company was downsizing. One position had to go. Claire's role was technically redundant. Daniel was asked for input. He didn't fight. He told himself it was logical. He told himself he couldn't risk his own job. He told himself that Claire was talented and would land somewhere else quickly. He told himself that this was business, not personal. But business doesn't knock on your door at 9 p.m. with tears in its eyes. That night, Claire stood on his doorstep, rain soaking through her coat, heartbreak shaking her voice. She had just received the termination email. She had just learned that Daniel had supported the decision. And in that moment, everything she had swallowed for months erupted. "You're fired." It wasn't about the job. It wasn't even about the recommendation. It was about the fact that she had quietly chosen him every day and he had never chosen her once. Daniel stared at her, stunned not by her anger but by the hurt beneath it. Mia peeked from behind the hallway corner, sensing something heavy in the air. Claire didn't shout again. Her voice broke instead. She told him she hadn't expected him to love her. She hadn't even expected him to notice her feelings. But she had expected honesty. She had expected him to look at her and see a human being, not just a line item on a budget sheet. Daniel felt something inside him crack, not pride, not ego, but fear. the fear that had been dictating his life since the day he lost his wife. He realized he had been living as if loving again would somehow betray the past, as if opening his heart would put Mia at risk, as if safety meant isolation. Claire had never wanted to replace anyone. She had only wanted to stand beside him. For the first time in years, Daniel stopped hiding behind responsibility. He stepped into the rain. He admitted he had been scared. He admitted he had seen her kindness but pretended not to. He admitted that he had convinced himself that pushing her away was strength. It wasn't strength, it was avoidance. He told her he couldn't undo the company's decision overnight, but he could fight for her in the morning. He could speak up. He could admit he had been wrong. The next day, Daniel walked into his boss's office not as a cautious employee, but as a man willing to risk comfort for what was right. He explained Claire's contributions. He presented solutions to restructure without eliminating her role. He offered to take on additional workload if needed. It wasn't guaranteed. Nothing in life ever is. But sometimes courage shifts outcomes. The company reversed the termination. Claire returned, not because she needed saving, but because someone finally acknowledged her value. Their relationship didn't transform into a fairy tale overnight. It unfolded slowly, carefully, with conversations instead of assumptions. Mia warmed up to Claire not because she tried too hard, but because she showed up consistently, gently, honestly. Daniel learned that protecting his daughter